Oh, cool. Hey, how are you doing, everybody? We're going to get started here. We have a few people in the building with us, and then we have hopefully many more online, right? So let's go through. I've got some PowerPoints. We're going to let the PowerPoint slides guide us this evening, and I'm going to put the first slide up. We named this presentation Cruising Smartly. The idea is if you're an informed consumer and you know what you're buying, that you're going to save money doing it. Because if you don't know, that's going to always cost you more money. Because who's ever selling you whatever you're looking to buy, they know more than you do, right? So the first slide, this is me, Kevin Mielke, native Minnesotan, and I served in the Air Force. I'm an Air Force veteran, and I met my wife when I was serving at RAF Upper Hayford in England. So we've been married now for 41 years. And we knew each other for 1 month before we got married. So I have my degrees. I have a BS in Business Administration, a master's degree in marketing. I spent 30 years with B&W and RJR. I retired from them. After I retired, I was still young enough to want to do some more work. So I tried to find a position where I could do that from home. I didn't want to drive, and I didn't want to fly, and I didn't want to go to any more boring meetings. So I found an opportunity with World Travel Holdings, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about who World Travel Holdings is in a minute. But my wife and I are going on our 12th cruise in September, and we're taking my younger sister on a cruise just in the Gulf, and she's never cruised before, so she's just beside herself with excitement. We were online the other day with her on the phone, and we picked out our shore excursions, and so she was just getting a real kick out of that. She's just, like I said, so happy to be going, and her husband's a big chicken. He doesn't want to go. So we're taking her, and she's happy to go, and he said, take her with, I got things to do at home. So he's staying at home. But World Travel Holdings, this is the company I work for online. So they sent me all off. I had never sold a cruise in my life. I had been on 2, but never sold one. So what World Travel Holdings is, this is a huge company, probably the second largest company that sells cruises in the United States for sure. And I don't know globally where they're at, but they are a huge company. So they own some of the world's largest brands, right? They sell cruises, villa stays, hotels, resorts, but they sell. And they got a big portfolio of different brands that they sell. They have a global presence because it would have been 5 years ago now, they bought a travel agency in England. So they have a presence there now too. So they have offices in Wilmington, Massachusetts, Fort Lauderdale. You can see Virginia Beach, New York, and the Chorley, England location. So this is a big company. This is some of the companies that World Travel works with. So what you'll find is some travel companies sell just what they sell. You know, they sell for themselves. So if you walk into an agency, they might be a sole proprietor. So they'll just sell cruises, right? These guys, they're hooked up with, and they sell cruises contractually for American Airlines, Delta, United, Hawaiian. You can see the list there. So if you ever get a flyer in the mail and it says buy a cruise from Delta Airlines Cruises, you're calling World Travel Holdings. And if you say walk into BJ's Travel in a BJ's store, they're a membership operation, and call their travel number for cruises, you could get me. And you could also, they also sell for Priceline, Cheap Caribbean, entertainment. You ever see those entertainment books that kids sell in school for 25 bucks a book? If you call the number in there, you get me. When I was working there, you could have got me too. And then they also sell cruises for Marriott, Hilton Hotels, Grand Vacations, and Choice Hotels. You familiar with? They have a whole 3 or 4 different names that they go under as well. So the thing was, I would wear a headset. It would beep in my ear, and it would say Delta Cruises. And I would say, then it'd beep again. And I would say, hi, this is Kevin with Delta Cruises. How can I help you? And you'll say, well, what if somebody called shopping and they called both of them? That only happened to me once in all the years I did it, where a lady got me, she called me, we talked, she hung up. The next call came in on a different airline, and she said, didn't I just talk to you? And the fact is, she did. So, I mean, we never denied it. We said, yes, we represent many different companies and sell cruises for them. Because obviously the airlines, they sell air travel. That's what they're good at. We sold cruises. That's what we were good at. And there's no way, it would be very hard for one agent to know everything about airline travel and everything about cruising and everything about hotels. It just usually doesn't happen that way. If you've ever talked to somebody online, normally they want to transfer you over to somebody. Like, are you interested in a car rental? They'll say, yes, well, let me get you over to that person, and they would transfer you off, They wouldn't sell that to you directly. So World Travel Holdings, they also have 13 .com brands. So they go under the name of Cruises Only, Cruise.com, Cheap Cruises, Cruise 411, and I worked at LuxuryOnly.com. So if you're an agent, you only work really for one of these, and especially me in the LuxuryOnly.com. Now the other agents that sold Carnival and the other cruises, you could reach them too under many of those, any one of those .coms, right? So if you think there's just one guy sitting there selling for one cruise line when you call, that is not the case, right? So I guess we can do some introductions, but I think we all know each other, right? I don't know if we need to go through that, but now, Pastor, you guys said you went on one cruise, right? One, and who was that on? And see, we were talking about before the meeting started, a lot of people do that with Carnival because they're an entry-level cruise line. They usually offer shorter length of cruises. They are a cruise line for what I call the working man. He can't get a week off, and if he does, he's going to go hunting. I mean, you know what I mean? He's not going to go off and go on a ship for a week. And Janet? Port Canaveral, so another Florida port. The bulk of the ports in the U.S. are on the south coast because that's closest to the Gulf, right? So, and was it a big ship? Yeah. And Royal Caribbean, the way you can tell their ships, it's always something named of the seas, right? So if you ever see a cruise and it's Anthem of the Seas, that's a Royal Caribbean ship because all of their ships are named of the seas. And Royal Caribbean is what I would call a middle-tier cruise line. But the problem, sometimes we have with Royal Caribbean is they get 4,000 and 5,000 people now on their cruises. So this would be 5 times larger than my hometown in Minnesota. So when you get on that ship, you are in a small city. I mean, they have their own fire department, their own security. I mean, they have everything a small town would have. And they are totally in charge of everything that goes on that ship. Because most of the ships in the cruise line zone are not registered in the U.S. And I think you probably heard our President Trump, he's mad at Cuba now. So cruise ships could never go to Cuba years ago because they had to sail around it to get to the rest of the islands down there that are very popular. And now all of a sudden I think last year was the first year that they were allowed to stop in Cuba. And Cuba liked that because it brought a lot of revenue and people and money, U.S. dollars usually, into the port. Well, now Trump said, soon, if things don't change, we're not going to allow any U.S. citizens to go to Cuba like it was before. So the cruise lines are going, whoa. So now he's got their attention because they make a lot of money stopping in Cuba because it's a new stop. And there's a lot of people, when I was selling cruises, would call me, and they knew every ship on the water from every company, and they have a game they play where they want to sail on all of them. So if a new ship comes out, because all the cruise lines will add new ships every once in a while, this is very popular because people book it straight away because they haven't sailed on that ship yet, and they want to take it off their bucket list. Royal Caribbean, passenger count-wise, is the largest cruise line on the planet. Ship-wise, and all the ships under the Carnival umbrella, they have the most ships on the water. But with all these 4,000 and 5,000 passenger ships that Royal Caribbean's got on the water now, man, it doesn't take long to surpass anybody. Because I don't even know what an average cruise ship would carry, but it used to be like 2,000 was a lot of people. But if you've ever been on Royal Caribbean, what do you do when you get there? You're going to stand in line, you're going to wait in line, and we're going to talk about different ways, different cruises you can book where you don't have to do that. Right? 24 elevators. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now my wife you'll see, she has suggestions for cruisers I put in at the end of this. She never rides an elevator, she always takes the stairs. And she's never put on a pound on a cruise. And I would venture anybody, even online or in this room, to say that they haven't usually gained weight if you eat at home, for crying out loud. And on a cruise ship, you got food everywhere all the time. So that's her claim to fame. Me, I prefer the elevators, but you can see. And what, you guys, you've not cruised. You're thinking about it, though, right? So, well, maybe we'll talk tonight and you can kind of get to... Did it cruise? Well, and a lot of people won't fly. Like I just talked about my sister's husband. He won't fly, just won't do it. But now for cruising, I think people have a misconception about the ship in general because it's on the water. And really, like I tell people who don't like to fly, you don't even really know you're flying except when you land or take off. In a cruise ship, you don't even know you're on water unless you look outside. And the ship is so big, it's like a city on water. So if you don't like to look at the water, if that makes you queasy, and I think I've only gotten sick one time on a cruise ship because of the water, but most cruise ships have fins that come out the side of the ship that's stable. They're called stabilizers, so they don't, otherwise the ship would rock. And these fins keep the ship from, doing that. They just extend them. They can extend them in rough water as far out as they need to go, as far as they'll go. And then in calm water, they pull them in because it's a drag on the ship when they're cruising forward, right? But if they're just going at a slower speed, they can put the fins out. It's like a rudder, kind of a side rudder, basically. Yep. All right, let's move right along. Hey, here's a trivia question. And I've even got some prizes. Now, there's 4 of you, so I'm not going to say it, but everybody's going to get a prize. So you're the first to go. So here's your first trivia question. World's lowest and flattest country. And I gave you options so you don't have to look bad guessing something. But you can pick one of them. Grand Cayman? Other votes? What do you guys think? Bahamas? Maldives? Sri Lanka. Good one. Good one. Well, the winner is the Maldives. They're a 200-island chain in the Indian Ocean. The highest natural point is my height above sea level on all the islands. So this is all, 6 feet is the tallest spot because they're all just sand islands. So my height is the highest point in the Maldives on any of the 200 islands that are there. So first prize.
So any ocean rise is pretty much going to take care of that.
It'll wipe it right out. Yeah. All right, moving right along. So why cruise, right? So I've made, you've probably got your own ideas here. I'm going to take a chair because I can't stand the whole time. But why cruise? So it's fun, right? Those of you who've been on cruises, it's fun. You can take your whole family with, right? And groups. You could do group, like you took a group trip to Ireland, you can do that with that. The key thing with cruises is you can go to lots of different places without packing and unpacking, right? You just put your stuff away one time, and then when the cruise is over, you pack it back up and you take it home. So that's a lot of advantages there. And then the scenery, the locales, the food, right? Good food. And I think the one thing my wife, I told you she never put on a pound on a cruise. One thing that helps her is she never goes to the buffet. She always gets a plated meal. So even if she does go to the buffet, she doesn't go through and do what I do, obviously. She would just take 1 or 2 things and be done with it. She watches very closely. But the idea with her losing weight, besides using the stairs, is always go for a plated meal. And that way they control your portions. And you don't have to eat all that if you don't want to, right? And as you know, the meals, we'll talk about this, but one of the advantages, meals on the ships are free as long as you eat with the groups. But they do have different eating locations on some of the ships. And sometimes if they serve steak or something Italian, then they charge you extra for that. $25 on top of what you've already paid for the cruise. It's an onboard charge, right? You don't have to make your bed. I like that part. Room service on most cruise ships, now we're talking in generalities here, it's free. So my wife and I always start off the morning with breakfast delivered to our room. First, it gets you up in the morning. Remember, you don't overeat because you don't go to the buffet line. And it kind of gives us a chance. Normally when we cruise, we're going to talk about different types of staterooms. We do a balcony stateroom. So then we eat out on the balcony. And you don't have to tip the guy. You don't have to do anything. You order it the night before, hang the card on your door, and you're good to go. They'll deliver it if you say delivered at 7, they're there. And the good thing about it is normally when you cruise, you're in a different time zone, right? Unless you're in the Gulf, but if you travel anywhere this way, east or west, you're in a different time zone. So by having somebody deliver your breakfast in the morning, you know what you got to do? Get up. Because when we go to England the first time, my wife and I used to travel back to her country, they're a 5-hour time difference, East Coast, 6 hours when we lived in Minnesota. So what you want to do when you get there, and you want to get up at 8 in the morning, to you that's 2 in the morning. So your biological clock says sleep till 2, and then get up, right? But what we try and do is go to bed with them, like if we went to visit her people, and whoever we stayed with, we go to bed when they go to bed, and we get up when they get up. That's the easiest way we found to compensate for the time difference. And there's a lot of varied experiences on board, and we're going to talk about this briefly. And what I have here is I brought each evening on ship, you're going to get delivered to your room a program of stuff that's going to happen the next day. So I brought some examples I'll hand out. But this is from Cunard, because we've been on Cunard. And you can see this is from Sunday, because I'm a Virgo, so I keep them all. But they list all the activities that you can do while you're on board. So take a look at that. It tells you all the restaurants. Take a peek. This is from Celebrity. Didn't you go? What did you say?
Royal, and I'm a Virgo, and I kept all mine too.
Oh, good. I can keep them by day. I'm going to put those back. But here's another one, too, for you to look at. That's from Cunard. And so what I like to do, being a Virgo, in the evening, they'll hang the activity of the daily program for what's going on the ship and where it's going to be and all the information you need on your door. When you get back at night to go to bed, there's a little case on your door, a card holder, and it's big enough to accommodate those bulletins. So they'll bring them in. They'll put them there, bring them all around that night. So that at night, being a Virgo, I bring a yellow marker, and I go through and mark all the stuff I want to do. And then Karen goes in and marks all the stuff she wants to do. And sometimes, parts of the day, we don't see each other for a while because she's doing, obviously, other things than I do because she's not gaining weight, remember? So this is safe travel. Now, you could debate that lately because we put this out, and one of the guys here sent me a note back of this is called Cruising Smartly, and he said Cruising Not Smartly. And he showed a picture of, I think just this past week in Venice, the cruise ship lost control and it went right into the pier, hit another a river cruise ship, and it was bad. So things do happen occasionally on cruise ships, just like they do on airlines. But the incidence is so small that when it does happen, like with an airline, it's big news, right? And it's usually a ship, I hate to say this, because Carnival has the most ships on the water and own other cruise companies as well. It's going to be something to do with Carnival Corp, because they just have a bigger presence on the water, right? Not that they're necessarily any safer or less safe than any of the other ones. So cruise companies, here's something about cruise companies, right? Believe it or not, usually they cruise at 100% capacity. The total capacity on cruise ships versus the number of hotel rooms in the world is 2%. So of all the hotel rooms in the world, only 2% of them are actually cruise ships represent on the water, right? So they have a very high satisfaction rate. In other words, not a lot of people complain about it when you're on a cruise, because you could if you want to, but what's to complain about, right? It's a fun time. You're going to a fun place. You meet people. It's very social if you want to be. You can sit in your room and read a book, or out on your balcony, or whatever you want to do. Go to the pool. But so since they're basically at 100% capacity and they have a good satisfaction rate, they don't like to discount their pricing. Now, you may argue with that and say, I see cruises at different prices. Yes, but there's so much that goes into that, and different people count different things and view discounts differently. But some of the things they offer, onboard credit, what that is when you get to the ship, when you get to the ship, you'll give them a credit card, whatever card you're using for that trip. They'll give you a pass, some kind of a ship card, credit card. So you never use a credit card on the ship, ever. You may if you go to even if you go to the jewelry store and buy jewelry, whatever, it always goes on your ship card. And at the end of the week, when you settle up your account, you pay for it with a credit card. The only places on the ship that won't take credit cards, casino, because they want cash, because obviously they're not going to give you a bunch of money and then have you cancel the transaction. And then if you want to have a credit card off the ship, you can use it when you get off and look around. But free drink packages, on a cruise ship, most cruise lines, they're going to charge you for every drink. Unless you go on a luxury line, which is what I sold, a lot of them, if the bar is open, drinks are on us. You can have whatever you want. As long as the bar is open, you can have whatever you want. So it's included in the price you pay. Otherwise, for all these, a lot of these things, a lot of people call it getting nickel and dime to death. So every time you order a soda or a beer or a drink or wine, they're going to bring a slip. And normally, we'll talk about it later. Make sure you watch because they'll add an 18% or something like that on top of the drink price. So you wouldn't want to tip. If you're tipping, the guy is going to get 18% plus whatever you tip if you don't look. But that's a little way you can save money and make sure you look at the receipt. But they'll also offer discounted airfare because if they can't get people to the cruise, they can't sell the cruise. So you can do your own airfare. A lot of people have points with airlines, so you can use those if you wish. But they'll gladly sell you airfare because, Again, if you can't get there, you can't go on their cruise. So they have deals set up with different airline companies, all of them around the world, and they'll get you on a flight. Now that flight, the thing to watch out for is sometimes the flights will leave at the crack of dawn and get you home late. And what they're going to do is they're going to fly you in so you arrive in the port the day your cruise leaves. Because they're not going to, do anything with a hotel room. And then when you go home, they're going to fly you home the day your cruise is over, period. Now you can extend that. You can say, well, I want to stay a few extra days in Rome because who knows when I'll get back there. Well, they're going to charge you for that. I know with Oceania, one of the sort of entry-level luxury lines, it was $175 just for you per person to change that flight. So there are advantages and disadvantages to using their air. They may offer free upgrades. And now before I sold cruises, I assumed upgrades, they were from like an inside room to an ocean view. Within each of those categories of inside rooms, there might be 6 different types of inside rooms. And we'll talk about that later, but they will move you up and down in that category that you've already booked. Usually not to the next category up. In other words, if you booked an inside, they might move you to a different part of the ship and put you in a better inside room, but they're not going to upgrade you. But sometimes their promotions are, we'll sell you an ocean view room for an inside room price, or a balcony for an inside. So that's what they do. They'll flip and flop this stuff around to make it look more attractive, so you book. They're also past guests. They have all the cruise lines that I'm aware of have past guest programs, just like airlines do. So whenever you cruise them, you get points. So if you took a cruise and didn't get signed up with their past guests, you can still get signed up. They'll just look up and see when you cruised and start your program going. Some of the cruise lines, Carnival is probably the one that does this the most. They'll offer discounts for senior citizens, if you served in the military, single, firefighters, all that stuff. Even ARP sometimes they'll give you a discount. So they're looking to discount off of something that you're a part of or have been. They're not looking to discount the price of the cruise. It's like a restaurant. If you go in and order something off the menu and you don't ask if they give an ARP discount or a military discount, they're not going to give it to you. So this is part of being a knowledgeable consumer when you're buying cruises, is make sure you ask. Do you give any discount for ARP? It doesn't hurt to ask, right? It doesn't hurt to ask. They can just say no. But now, one of the big things that was coming on when I was selling cruises is what they call niche cruising, right? So this is where people want to go to the Galapagos Islands, right? This is a special place on Earth where not a lot of people are going to ever get there. And Paul Gauguin, I've got some signs up here because I called my agent there, and she said, let me send you some stuff. So it looks like we have Paul Gauguin here, but I called the other ones, and they didn't send anything. So we put up what we get. And on the back table back there, there's a bunch of brochures and information. And all that information I've gotten in the past 2 months. I just saved it. Some of them are a little older, but the bulk of that information, since I used to sell, I'm still on their mailing list. And once you get on the mailing list, as with most things, it's hard to get off of there. But my wife and I still look at cruises because we're going to do some more cruising. I said we're doing a cruise later on this year, and we'll do more next year. But the big ships can't go to all these places because they're too big. The smaller ships, these are normally smaller ships, fewer people, under 150 on the ship, very few people, so it's a whole different experience than it is on your Royal Caribbean cruise. You don't wait in line for anything. You get to know the people like they're friends of yours forever. When you stop somewhere, there's no rush to get off the ship. You don't have to get off the ship in tiers of people, all that. It gets to be a real hassle after a while. But the people that sell these niche cruises, they're experts in what they sell. Like this Paul Gauguin, they sell niche cruises, like I said, in Tahiti. That's their area of specialties. You know what they know about Tahiti? Everything. You know what you may know about Tahiti? Nothing. So when you engage them in a conversation, unless you've done your homework, they're going to know more than you. And if a salesman knows more than you, that's bad for you. But they're great people there, so they take care of you. But I mean, it's just better to know more about what you're buying. So now we've decided to go on a cruise, okay? We're going. We don't care about the water thing. So first you have to decide, one of the key things you have to figure out is who's going to go with you. My wife going, my going guy myself, right? Or my wife, my spouse, whoever your special someone is going to go with you, so you're going to have 2 people. The berths, the rooms are all set up for 2 people. Some of them will accommodate more people in a bunk situation. You can get more than 2 in there in some of the staterooms, but they sell them for 2. And if you want to bring your children with, they'll sell you a bigger room, and then they'll maybe charge you less for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, however many people can fit in there. Then where would you like to go? When would you like to go? These are the first things an agent will ask you when you call. What type of experience do you want to have? So we can have an experience on a huge cruise ship with 2,500 people on board, 4,000 people, or not. And if you do that, you'll move away from the mid-level cruises into what I sold, which was the luxury cruises. So you're going to pay a little more up front. But what you're doing is you're paying a little more to keep the other guy who would go on the Royal Caribbean cruise with you at home. In other words, he'll charge you a little more because instead of having 2 people on the ship, they'll just have you. And what you're always looking for on cruises is the staff to guest ratio. It's a big deal. You should be able to find it on any cruise line that you're looking at. And the lower the ratio, the better for you. Because if it's 5 to 1, that means there's 5 guests and there's only 1 crew person to take care of 5 people, theoretically. They just take total staff on board and divide it by the number of passengers on board. So a huge 4,000 person Royal Caribbean ship, the guest to staff ratio is going to be sky high. I don't even know what it is. Could be 20 to 1. So what happens if you need help or you're going to have to stand in line and wait? Because that one guy theoretically is helping 20 different people. So on a luxury line, it's 2 to 1. For every 2 people, you might have 1 person. It's very, very low, and that's what you're paying the extra money for. And now when you start getting a little older like me, I appreciate that. When you're still young enough and you want to bring your kids with, you're used to the hustle and bustle of people running everywhere and doing everything. I'm not a fan of that anymore. When we took our Carnival cruise, I talked to the guy on board, and each night we wanted to lay our little heads down. There were kids running up and down the hallway because for some reason when people go on cruises, they think their kids can just run around anywhere they want to. I don't know what it is. But anyway, I talked to the guy, and I said, there were a lot of kids running up and down the hallway last night. He said, yeah, here's the number, and you'll never forget it. 71% of the people on this ship, guests, are 17, so flip the numbers, and younger. So imagine that. So you know what that ship was, the pool was always full of people, the buffet lines were always full of kids eating. When you see them eat, you think they don't get fed at home. The parents just let them go. I'm not saying all, but there are, on occasion, a few kids running up and down. Imagine a ship that's 3 football fields long or 4 or 5, and can you imagine a kid looking down that and going, I'm running that. I'm running all the way from this end to that end. And if your room's along the way somewhere, they're going to run right by your room. Usually they're screaming. So that's what you get, right? This is what they do. I love kids, but so that's kind of, you have to figure out what kind of experience do I want. So you have to look. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the stateroom choices. What kind of room do I want? We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then why do I need to know the answers to all these questions? Because it will make your experience with the agent much better. And they'll love you for it because they can get right down to business. If you know the answer to all those questions, you will have, when I used to have my experienced cruisers call me, they already know what cruise line they want to go on. They already know when they want to go. They know who's going with them. They even know the stateroom number that they want. So this is perfect. I just have to do it, make sure everything looks good, and off we go. But an inexperienced cruiser, I had a lady call me one time. She said, I really want to go to Hawaii. And I said, oh, well, that's possible. We have cruise ships that do Hawaii. I said, where do you live? And she said, New York. And I said, how long do you have for your vacation? She said, a week. And I said, well, the flight to California can take almost a day. And she said, no, I want to cruise it. And I said, are you familiar with the map? If you look where New York is and Hawaii is way over here, that cruise would take you, I don't even know how long, 3 weeks or a month just to get there. If you're going, you got to go down, go through the Panama Canal, go, it's 6 or 7 days cruise to Hawaii from LA. So it's like, anyway, so that's what you get, but you get everything. Yeah. So that's why it's good to know what you want when you call. Okay, so who's going to go with you? Okay, we've decided, right? And here's some things to know probably before you've decided. Cruise lines charge per person, right? It's not like a hotel where dad pays, $100 and you cram 17 people in a hotel room. Doesn't work like that. They know exactly who's on board at all times. And when you come on board and dad or mom gives them a credit card and they give you the card, they'll give cards to the kids too. And they always have to carry the cards with them, always. You'll see some people with the lanyards around their neck with a pocket, because you have to always be identifiable to staff so they know who you are. And if you get lost, they can find back your people, but unless they're hiding, which means you couldn't find them. But, so just remember that. And there's also minimum age requirements. In most cruise lines, you can't take a baby unless they're 24 months old. Each cruise line's a little different. You'd have to wait. But can you imagine having a bunch of 1-year-olds on a cruise ship and something bad happens? I mean, they do have doctors and nurses on board, but this is not free. So if you get sick on a cruise ship, we'll talk about insurance later. You better have some kind of insurance, because it's like if you go skiing in Colorado, where I used to live, and you fall down and hurt your leg, you better have insurance, because they're going to take you to a doctor, but when you get the bill, you're going to be shocked at what they charge you. So discounts, like I mentioned before, they usually discount, not usually, sometimes. It just depends who you're booking with and when you're going. They'll discount for the third and fourth passenger in the same cabin. And usually that's your children, right? If mom and dad are going there taking kids with them. And if you're old enough, sometimes you can do 2 rooms next to each other. That they'll have a connecting door like in hotels. And then theoretically they'll put mom in one room with the kids and dad in the other one. And then what you do when you get in there to switch things around is up to you. Question, sir?
Is there ever a room with 5?
Yes. Oh, sure, yeah. Yep, you can get 5 in there. I don't know about 6. 5 is, but in like Carnival, some of the rooms I've seen, mom and dad will sleep down here, and the kids there'll be a mechanism that pulls out of the wall, and then the kids will sleep above you. You know what I mean? Or in most rooms, there's 2 beds, 2 twin beds, and if it's just mom and dad going, they'll push those 2 together. And really, I can't tell that, sometimes if you push 2 beds together, you fall through the crack. But they've got a special way they do it where you don't even know. And then that's called a European queen, because it's a little wider than a queen bed, but it's not as big as a king-size bed. So that's what my wife and I do. When we had the kids, we had kids everywhere. Sometimes if you get the 5th kid in the room, there'll be a pallet, I would call it a pallet or a stretcher, pulls out from under your bed, and they'll be sleeping there. So one time I had to go to the bathroom. We took our kids on a cruise with us once, because we had other things we did. But I had to step over people just to use the bathroom. So you have to bear in mind what you're buying. And if you're going to put 5, would you do that at home? Probably not. But if you're looking to save money, probably you would. So it's up to you. It's up to you. Port fees and taxes. Now if you get a cruise fare online and it's, say, they want to charge you, let's say $300 for a cruise, you're just going for a couple, 3 days, there's going to be port charges, which are the charges they're passing on to you, because when a ship docks in a port, wherever they're docking, there's fees associated, like parking fees that you pay when you go to the airport. Same thing. So they're called port. And then there's taxes on it too. We all pay taxes. You know what that means. And it varies. They're unpredictable how much this is going to be. So eventually you'll get that number. But that is not included in the price they're quoting you. It's going to be plus that. Single supplement. So you're going to go by yourself. Nobody wants to go, but you want to go, right? So single supplement, generally you're going to pay 150% or 200% of the fare. So do you remember that $300 fare I quoted you? If you're a single in a room, you may have to pay $600 plus tax, port fees and taxes if you want to be in there alone. Because the cruise ship is set up profitability-wise to have 2 people in every room. Because not only are you going on board, we'll talk about it later, you're going to spend more money on the ship too. That's why you are definitely there for however many days your cruise is, and they want to get all the money out of you they can. So you can pay 150%. I got one here. Crystal Cruise Lines, which is a luxury line, they call them independent adventurers. So right now they're offering low solo fares starting at 110% of regular fares. Aha, this is a deal if you're a solo traveler. And I had so many people that used to call me and say, hey, it's just me. I want to go on a cruise, but I don't want to pay double. Because that's what you're looking at. So there are websites you can go to, just Google it, and it'll tell you which cruise lines are offering solo fares. Because it's mostly senior citizens that want to go, and so they may or may not have any buds that want to go with them. So that's fine. Just be aware of that it's going to cost you more. It's better to take somebody you don't like than pay 150%. Just kidding. But again, they'll offer to assist you with your airfare. Usually a good deal, but can be, remember I talked about restricted to carriers and flight, extra charges for changing, if you don't travel on the day of your departure return. So be aware of that, right? Cunard, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law are on a cruise right now in Cunard coming back from London. And we found years ago that you can actually fly to London and cruise back for the same price within $100 of what you'd pay just to fly both ways. Now this is a deal and a half, right? And once you get to England, now you're in Europe. You can take the train over to Paris. You can get anywhere you want to on the continent. And Cunard, for instance, a little tidbit, they'll fly you over there 30 days before your cruise starts to come back home then to New York. They do Southampton, New York. Or if you cruise over, they'll let you stay 30 days before you got to fly back. So they give you a month on either side of that. It is a heck of a deal. And we usually fly over because we're anxious to get there. My wife's from there. She wants to see her people. So we'll fly over, get there, do our thing, and we'll stay for a couple, if we can swing it, 2-3 weeks at least. Then we'll just go down to Southampton, board the Queen Mary, and it takes 7 days to cruise back to New York. And the key thing there is you gain 5 hours going back, right? So if you take a flight to London, you're 5 hours behind. Remember I was talking about that before? You get there at 2 a.m. in the morning. Well, to them it's 7 a.m. They're already getting up and you want to go to sleep. So the nice thing about the cruise back is if you got to make up that 5 hours, right? So here you go. The first day you go this far, you gain an hour because you change time zones. You go this far, now you gain another hour back. So 5 out of the 7 days, you have 25-hour days, which is kind of nice if you're in a cruise ship because you can eat more, right? I do. Passports. Passports are a key thing when you travel, right? People always ask me, can I go without one? I said, well, let's imagine worst case scenario. I'm only going to Mexico, or some of the people say, well, I'm going back and leaving from a U.S. port, and I'm coming back to a U.S. port. You know what? I don't care what port you leave from, you come back from, you need to have a passport. Because if my sister, this trip we're taking in September, we're leaving from Mobile, Alabama. We're doing just a big loop in the Gulf. We're stopping at 2 places in Mexico and just coming right back to Mobile. Well, what would happen if you got sick and they had to take you off the ship in Mexico? So now you're in Mexico with no passport. And you know what the U.S. government is going to say to you when you try and get back in? Where's your passport? So sad. Climb the wall. I don't know. But so always have a passport. It's good to have one even if you're not going anywhere. It really is, because pretty soon they've made rules different now in airlines. It's good to have a passport just to take with you, because you never know, So I always encourage people, get a passport. And the key thing is, if you're a solo parent, so if Pastor Fred wants to take one of the kids with on the flight, or on a cruise, you're going to have documentation that you are the parent and that you have the permission of your wife or husband to be on that ship with that child. Or they will not let you board. Because in their mind, you could be you kidnapped, maybe it's a divorce settlement, You took the kid, you're taking him on the cruise ship, and you're going to stay in Mexico because you lost the divorce settlement. So whenever you go on a cruise, you must make sure that you have documentation with you from your spouse or say you're taking your grandchildren, from the parents then that allow you to have that child on board, or they will not let you board. You'll get to the port and they'll say, not yet, you're not going. So just remember that, and especially if they have a different last name than you, right? This I got from the internet. I don't know, best value for money cruise line. So Princess, I've cruised them. We did them to Alaska. They're a nice cruise line, but they're a mid-level cruise line. They're not entry-level. Mid-tier, they're not luxury. So you know what we did a lot? Stand in line. You got to stand in line to eat. You got to stand in line to get coffee, and they charge you for everything. Not to eat, of course, if you're eating in the big dining hall. But if you want a coffee, you can buy a coffee card that they punch every time. It costs you money. If you want to get a drink on board, you either pay for it onesie, or you get it on the drink package, the beverage package they offer. And the thing about a beverage package is it costs you per person per day, and you can't share. So if Mr. and Mrs. are getting on, they're both big drinkers. If you buy one, they'll make her buy one too. And she doesn't drink. It depends what the rules are. Again, they're all a little different. You have to ask because they don't want you sharing, right? And these drink packages, because they let you buy wine and beer and alcohol, spirits, all that, they can be some $60 to $70 a day. I think I'll have a number in here later on about that. So you have to really decide who can drink $70 worth of booze in a day. I mean, I don't drink that in a year because I don't drink, but I mean, if you can do it, more power to you. You'll spend most of your time sleeping, I would guess, or not being well, but it's up to you. But you can see the list here of the different cruise lines, and I just found this on the internet, so I don't know this for a fact, but that's just what they're talking about. So luxurious. Now this I know because I sold luxury, right? So Crystal Cruises, I've got information on that back table. Crystal Cruise Lines is my favorite. Now I haven't cruised them all, but of the ones we sold, Crystal Cruise Lines, absolute favorite. They have perfect customer service. When the bars are open, you drink. You're going to pay a little more to do this, right? You never stand in line for a thing. You never stand in line to eat. You never stand in line for anything. The pool, you have at it. You can sit wherever you want to, lay down wherever you want to. It's perfect. How many kids are on board a Crystal Cruise? Usually a few. But they just started offering now a little deal for kids because I think they realize they're losing some revenue there with not letting the kids on. But a very low percentage of their guests are children. And Cunard actually they have a limit on how many children they'll let on board below 17. So if you call late to book a cruise and you have children, you may not get on if they're under, if they're not adults because they already hit their limit. Sir? It depends, about 900. They have two ships. The Symphony, it was the one we sailed on, and I've got information back there, about 900. And it's a fairly large ship. I don't know the tonnage off the top of my head. But if you go on a Crystal Cruise Line, you will not want to cruise with anybody else. If you can afford to, you won't. But it's sort of like, I don't know, with cars, if you've driven a fancy schmancy car, and some people it's no big deal, right? But if you drive a really nice leather, with all accoutrements, all that, it's hard to go back to something less, right? It's just hard to do. But Seabourn, another luxury line, never cruised them, but they're very good too from the feedback I got. Silver Sea, Sea Dream Yacht Clubs. Now they sell yachts, so very few people, Fred, maybe 125 on board. So you know them intimately. I mean, you know them by name. They know you by name. They pride themselves on the smaller ships of knowing who you are because that's the kind of service they give. Imagine that on your Royal Caribbean ship. 4,000 people? I can't remember, anybody. And then Region 7 Seas is probably, I haven't cruised them either. They are probably one of the most expensive cruise lines out there in the luxury division. But you pay for really nothing on that ship. Everything is already paid for. I'm not talking about if you want top shelf liquor, if you want something extraordinary, that you'll pay for. But the average run-of-the-mill stuff on a cruise ship, it's free because you paid in advance. But you don't ever have to get your card out, If you're buying someone a nice piece of jewelry, that would be a card situation. But, I mean, everything that most people do on a cruise ship is included in the price. So that's another consideration, right? Do I want to pay for everything as I get on the ship and keep getting your card out and get this big bill at the end? Or do I want to control my expenses? I know exactly what I paid. And you don't find people. I told my brother the bar never closed. He said, why would you ever leave it? But, a lot of people, they'll watch, they'll take care of you. They want that kind of relationship with you. Trivia number 2. All right, here we go. Which country has the most fjords? And I even put on there what a fjord is in case you didn't know. Just inlets of water going into a big landmass. Let's go around the room. Fred, you can guess first because you had to guess last time. What do you think?
I am Norwegian, as you know.
Yeah, you are. You're going to Norway. Jan? Finland's okay. You won, so you have to weigh. Chile or Canada? Chile? So that leaves you Canada. You're a loser. You are a loser, I can tell you that right now. Norway has 1,000 fjords plus in how many cities? That's not part of the question. But yeah, so it's really cool because a lot of times, again, on these small ships, they can get you into not in the smaller fjords, obviously, but they can go places where bigger ships can't. So you're going to see a lot of stuff on a small ship that you won't see on a big ship, unless you want to pay for an excursion, which then money out. Okay, so now where do we want to go? The cruise itself, choosing where to go, okay? So most people have a little bucket list or someplace they want to go to. Like, I kind of wanted to go to Rome just to see what was going on there. Because you hear, it's obviously Barcelona, all these different places. So you have to figure out where you want to go. And then the next question is, do I want to do a river cruise or an ocean cruise? So if you're going to Barcelona, you want to cruise out of there, that's going to be an ocean cruise. If you're going into Europe, we did a beautiful river cruise, Jan, up the Rhine. Probably there's multiple cruise lines that do river cruises. And it's a whole different experience than an ocean cruise. Fewer people. Ships are smaller because they got to get under the bridges. The excursion in the morning, most of them will take you on a free excursion in the morning. And if you're in Europe, that's going to somehow entail a castle or a church, because that's what they have there. But and then they'll bring you back to the ship. You'll have lunch, and then they usually give you the afternoon. Remember, on river cruises, where the ports are for river cruises, and usually in the center of a big city, right? So you're going to be stopped right smack dab in the middle of a European city. So in the afternoon, you can walk around to your heart's content. And they'll say the ship leaves at 6, be back by 5. Or you're walking to the next stop. But that's kind of one of the nice things about it is you got that kind of capability. Now, obviously, you can't do that on a big ocean cruise line. So fewer people. And we went on Viking. They're obviously one of the better known ones because they advertise here dramatically on PBS stations. Downton Abbey. I mean, Downton Abbey, for a while, Viking had a cruise you could take where you could cruise Europe, and then they'd fly you over to England and take you to the castle they used to film Downton Abbey at. It was very popular, very popular. So if you have less than a week, obviously you can't go far. So you're going to be doing a cruise in the Caribbean and the Gulf somewhere because you can't get very far if you don't have more than a week. Do you like long flights and time changes? So if you don't mind that, you can go anywhere you want to. But if you don't like that, that means you're not going, you're probably going to cruise out of the U.S. somewhere. Because otherwise, you got to fly here or fly there or fly to the Caribbean and catch a cruise ship down there. It's up to you. But it just depends what you can handle. Yes, sir?
Like if you're in this hemisphere, if you go to Europe or something, but if you go to the Far East, there's a huge language barrier, not so much, never speak English.
Well, the language barrier is almost non-existent because everybody on the cruise ship, usually you'll have someone that speaks English, and if you do an off-trip excursion, they know it's an English-speaking ship, so they'll have an English-speaking person with you. So language for us, we're never where we went. We were to Russia. I know if you're talking to the Russians, if they take you into Russia and show you around, now this could be an issue if you're dealing with somebody, in there. But normally on a cruise ship, there's always someone there that speaks English. And if you take a cruise that's coming out of the ship, they all speak English, right? Passports and visa. Now some countries require visas as well. Sometimes they'll take your passports when you get on the ship. They will take your passport when you get on the ship. You can't keep it. Canadians don't like to give up their passports for some reason because they told them up there, don't ever give up your passport. So we always say is before you leave home, make several copies of your passport. Because if you would ever lose it, at least if you have a copy of it, you got something to go on. And there are remedies, for getting another passport or getting back to in the country. But if you don't even have a picture of it, if I ever give my passport up, and they will collect them, because when they get to different countries on your itinerary, that they'll send people on board from the country, and you'll have to go down and line up. And one of the few lines we ever had on Crystal, and they'll look at your passport, look at you, and just stamp you. So it's either that, or when you disembark from the ship, they will check your passports. So it just saves you time when you're getting off the ship. What kind of ports do I want to visit? The most popular ones are going to be very busy. So we were in a port one time, and there were 6 cruise ships parked there at the same time. It's no different than if you go to Atlanta and try and drive in Atlanta. If you want to, it's just cars and people. I mean, everywhere there's people. So even when you go in the shops, if you go to the most popular places, that's why those niche cruises are getting to be popular, because a lot of people don't go there because it's too adventurous, for a lot of people. The weather. So we're going to go in the summer. Remember, the summer here is the winter in Australia. The hemisphere flipperooskies. So a lot of people, like when we did a cruise from New Zealand over to Australia, we went in February because that to them is like July. To us, it would be like July or August. So it's very warm there. And best time of year to go, obviously that it's connected with other things, but if you're going to go to Alaska, most people want to see whales, right? Why would you go to, if you don't want to see whales and eagles, why would, So if you want to see whales, that's the summertime, like into September. But a good agent will know that, when to tell you. If a cruise is cheaper to Alaska, it's probably leaving when the whales aren't so plentiful. Because the whales, are part of the cycle up there with the glaciers. And we went on a fascinating excursion up there where they told us we all know this, but everything is connected. Everything's connected. So when the glaciers fall into the ocean, they call them calving off. They'll fall, and there's minerals in the glaciers that they've scraped off the thing. The plankton come in from the sea, and they eat the stuff that's falls in the water. And then guess who comes to eat the plankton? The whales. And if you screw up one part of that, something gets screwed up. You know what I mean? So everything's connected. You'll find, and that really what drove that home to us. So when again, we talk about the who, what, when, where, kind of in the presentation. What fits your schedule? Because you have to figure that out. If you're taking the kids, it's going to be a summer cruise, right, normally. People try and squeeze in cruises in March down to the Caribbean with their kids. Good luck with that. Because you'd have to book it at least 2 years in advance. You're going to have trouble getting airfare down there because they jack up. Usually they move up the airfare because they know you're coming and you want to go there. So supply and demand kicks in. Again, I just talked about the wells in Alaska. Very popular thing, Jan, on river cruises, the Christmas markets in Germany. Where you'll stop at a town and you get off the ship and they have all the stalls set up. I think, unfortunately, a couple, 2, 3 years ago, there was an incident where a guy ran a truck and, we don't need to talk about that here, but the Christmas market's very popular. Big people go, a lot of people go over there for that. So, and then if you want to avoid the summer season, if you can do that, if you're not taking the kids, do that. But remember, just because our kids aren't in school in June, July, and August, that doesn't mean there won't be kids on board because other countries around the world don't subscribe to the same, schedules we do. Want to play golf? There's golf cruises. You go over to Europe, take a cruise, they'll take you off the ship in the morning, you'll play a round of golf, come back to the ship, have lunch, do something else in the afternoon, maybe go back and play another round of golf. Depends how long the port call is, how long they're in port. But you can do all this stuff. They have what they call specialty cruises. My wife wants to go on one where they sample wine all day. She'd be liking a wine, so she's a connoisseur. So again, what are we looking for here? Type of experience. Lots of people on the ship. This gets to be a little bit repetitive, but these are the key questions you have to ask yourself. Children, do you want more room in your stateroom or less? Does Fred want to put all the kids in the stateroom with him? No. The answer to that would be no. So you might get 2 connecting rooms like you would at a hotel. But they're going to charge you that second room. First and second person pay the most. So first and second person in that room, it's another room. So you're going to pay more for that, right? So if it's mom and dad in one room and in a connecting room it's 4 kids, first 2 are going to pay the same price as mom and dad. And then third and fourth might get a break. So if you want more room, it's going to cost you more money. You can pay for things as you go or pay up front. That's what we're talking about, our packages we can buy. So if you don't think you can drink $60 worth of alcohol in a day, if you just have 4 or 5 drinks, though, with the prices they charge and the service charge you get, it sometimes makes more sense to do it. Just depends what you're going to do when you get there, and you can decide that. So more ports or fewer. And it just depends, what you want to see when you get there. Some cruises will go for 7 days, and they'll stop at a new port every day. If you're in Europe, they can do that because it's not that far, in between all the ports. So you could go to a new port every day or maybe have 2 days where you don't or whatever. When we do this golf cruise, when we leave Mobile, Alabama, it's a full day to cruise to the first stop in Mexico. But then the next day, so the second day we make our stop, and then on the third day, we're doing another stop because it's a short distance between the two. And then on the fourth day, it's only a 5-day cruise. Fourth day, we're cruising all the way back on that day. So we're on ship, and we're taking advantage of some of those things that are in the bulletin. So staterooms. Let's talk about this for a minute. Anybody need a break? I don't. We'll just keep going, right? If you need something, go to the back, and you can certainly have a water or whatever you want. But staterooms, there's 4 basic types of stateroom on a ship. 4. Now, you're going to see some anomalies at different levels here, but the cheapest one, I put $1 sign there. That's an inside stateroom. What that means, it's a room where when you sleep in there, there's no light. The only light is if you turn it on. So the downside of that is you don't know if it's night, day. When you wake up in the morning, it's going to be dark all the time. So you're thinking, I'll just sleep somewhere, and pretty soon the day's gone. Ocean view, what an ocean view room is what you might think. You have a porthole or a window, right, that you can look out of. And then a balcony, or the fancy name for balcony is a veranda. You'll see that on a lot of cruise lines. Those that cost more, because then you're going to have a little area you can walk out on, right? And then the suites. Now, you can you can spend as much money as you want to for the suites, right? And I'm going to show you a picture a little bit later. But obstructed view, now what's that? Well, obstructed view, you can buy these rooms. You ever go to a baseball game and buy a seat with an obstructed view, Fred? And what does that mean? There's a pole. There's something in front of you where you don't have a direct line. So on a cruise ship, what might that be? The lifeboats. The lifeboats. So you're going to have an obstructed, either they call it partially obstructed or fully obstructed, which means that you won't be able, when you look out your porthole, you're going to see the side of a lifeboat. And they're cheaper. They're cheaper, because people don't want them, so they'll sell it to you cheaper. So if you don't mind, if you're not going to be in your room, Fred?
We were on the inside room.
Yeah.
We didn't care because, the lights are off.
You're sleeping.
The room was the same. But they had a fake porthole.
Oh, did it? Well, sometimes they will, and then they'll have images on it. So, like fish or something. Yeah. I'd be afraid the ship was sinking or something. So here's what a stateroom looks like, right? So if you look at this, and really they're all variations of this, right? So this is the stateroom. You're going to walk in the door here normally. The bathrooms are going to be right to your left or right. And if you're showering and if you're a guy my size, you're going to have to kind of turn like this, most of them. That's why a lot of people like rooms with, oh, is there one on here? Oh, where is it? In the middle? Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the bathroom. Oh, we're all teched up here. There's the bathroom, right? You can see it's tiny, and the toilets are the same kind in airplanes, so when you shut the lid and hit the button, back out, because it's going to take care of everything, suck everything down there. This is the closet, so that's what you're going to have for storage space usually, right there. So that's why don't bring much, right? The bed, now this is a veranda room, right, because we have a veranda here. But if this was a inside room, Fred, right, then this would be closed off, right? There'd be a wall here. That bed would be here, and it would all be smaller, right?
Pretty much the wall started at the bed.
Right here. Yeah, exactly. Because that's why they're cheaper, right? We know this now. And then for an ocean view room, again, it's going to be a shorter room, probably finished there. And then this, instead of these sliding doors here out to the balcony, that's going to be your porthole. And then obviously for this is a balcony veranda, so that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get the bed, you're going to get a couch. Sometimes, to your point, Fred, if you want to put 4 people in here, a bed will come out of that couch, like like you have at your house sometimes. But so that bed's going to fold out to here, so that's 4 people in there, and it can get tight. Otherwise, if it's just the 2 of you, no worries, you're good. And then a suite is going to be much larger than this. Suites may be double the size. It just depends how much you want to spend. Because you can spend as much on a suite if you want to. And some people just treat themselves and they want more elbow room, right? So they go ahead and get a suite. But I kind of pulled this out of Oceania. Remember now, Oceania is what we call an entry-level luxury line, right? So Oceania, you're going to have to pay for some things still when you get on board. It's not a full-blown luxury line where once you pay, you can have all the drinks you want and do all this other stuff, coffee, tea, all that stuff. So an example, and this is a suite. I pulled the suites up. But what this will do is there's the owner's suite. Look what that costs. That's the brochure fare. So let's talk about that. I had a lot of people call me because what cruise lines like to do is say 2 for 1. 2 for 1 cruise sale. Well, they don't mean that theoretically, 2 people can go for the same price. But you see the actual fare? It's about half of what their brochure fare is. Nobody sells cruises in this line at all. They put the big number there to make that number look smaller. Remember, these are suites, so I pulled the most expensive ones. So this is called an O-Life fare, and I'll talk more about that later. And this is just cruise only. So basically with an O-Life fare, that would include your airfare and some other, you'll get to pick from a package deal of what you want to go with the free airfare. We'll look at that in a minute. And then each of these types of staterooms are on different decks. So this ship has obviously 8 decks because usually the penthouses, that's what this is, are on the top deck. And so these 3 down here on deck 8, these are on 6, 7, and 8. And see the square room here? 1,000 square feet. I mean, some people's houses aren't even that big. And then they have a 92 square foot balcony. This is moving around room is what you got there. But now remember, this is not for 2. That's for 1 person. $11,000 almost. So $1,000 is what you're paying for this. Remember, this is the best room in the house, right? And then, so the status here, if you go on their website, that's where I pulled this from, it'll tell you if they're available or waitlisted. So on this particular cruise, they've sold out all the rooms at these price points. Imagine the money it takes to do that. But a lot of people have a lot of money, and they want to sail in a big room, and they don't care. So that's how they're going to spend their money. But Oceania, remember I talked to you about this O-Life choice? So it's our limited time inclusive package. Well, they've been doing it now for 7 years, so I guess limited time is a matter of perspective. Enjoy round-trip airfare, so they're going to pay for your airfare. And then free internet. On cruise ships, there was never any such thing as free internet. You have to pay for it. And then when you get on, it's slow because they do it off satellites. If you've ever messed with Hughes satellites or any of those other satellite companies, terrible connections. But if you're going on a cruise ship to be on the internet all the time, stay home. I mean, really, you have to be on the internet. I can see checking messages. Yeah, why do it? Why do it? But see, so for this special offer on this O-Life, now you get round-trip airfare, free internet, plus choose one. So they're going to give you one of these, 6 shore excursions. So this requires some homework to see if it's worth paying the extra. So shore excursions can run $150, but they will designate the ones that they'll give you for free when you go on to book them. And then beverage packets, remember we said that's $60 a day or whatever they charge. Is it worth it to you? Because it's per stateroom. These deals are not per person. So your wife might get it or you might get it, but if you want to buy her a beverage package, that's going to cost you more. And then there's a free shipboard credit. So really that is exactly what it is. So what they'll do is they'll take $600, and when you get there, you get your cruise card. When you give them your credit card and get the cruise card back, there's going to be $600 in your bank account. So the first $600 you spend on that cruise, they don't charge you for. It's like if you opened up a bank account and they said, well, here's $600 we'll start you out with. So it's free per se. But remember, over here, look at the difference between these two, right? Let's pick this one, $68.99 and $74.99. So that's $600 difference there? So that's per person, remember. So if you do the O-Life thing, they're going to give you $600 in credits, or really that's $300 per person. Because it's always, their benefits are per stateroom, not per person. Well, they charge per person, not per stateroom. So this is part of our cruising smartly lesson here, is you got to always be aware of exactly what it is they're selling you. So here's some additional charges on board that you might expect. We talked about some of these. So when you get on board, to them, remember, you're an audience that cannot leave the ship per se. You know what I mean? They have you on board for 7 days or 10 days, whatever length of time, and they're going to try and get you to spend money with them because it's like staying in a shopping mall is what it is. But gratuities, these they will charge you. Most of them, the luxury lines don't because it's included in your price. But Carnival Cruise Lines and the mid-level cruise lines, they'll charge you gratuities. And what this is tips for various services on board the ship. Usually it's the person who cleans your room, right? Because you just leave your room in the morning. When you come back, the bed will be made, new sheets, the whole thing will be done for you. You don't have to touch a thing. So normally the average gratuities that I saw when I checked, $16 per day per person. So if you're on a 10-day cruise with 2 people, that's going to cost you, an extra $320. So when we saw that O-Life advantage and they want to give you free gratuities, remember, that's half of that, not all of it, because it's per room. Free gratuities for one person in the room. But it would reduce, so that's why you have to crunch the numbers and see which would be a better deal for you. Now, different cruise lines do this differently, right? But this is some of the incentives. Remember I talked when we first started about things they'll do to incentivize you to buy a cruise from them? They'll give you free gratuities, meaning they'll pay the staff the gratuities. Because the staff on board those ships, they're gone from home for 9 or 10 months, depending on the length of their contract, and they don't get paid a lot of money. It's like servers in a restaurant in most states. So you're helping them to defray the cost of having these guys and gals on board. You'll pay for any drink. Remember, I'm talking about entry-level, mid-level cruise line, not luxury. Any drink besides water and juice, you're going to pay for. That includes coffee in most cases, unless it's with dinner. Anything with dinner, like coffee or juice or anything, that's free. But if you order a wine with dinner, charge you for that. If you order a beer with dinner, charge you for that, unless you're on the plan. If you're on the beverage plan. In some of the luxury lines, they will give you free drinks when you eat, but otherwise you have to pay for them. Like Azamara will do that. If you're eating, they'll give you a beer or or wine with dinner, not spirits. But if you have anything you drink outside of meals, obviously not breakfast, but lunch or dinner, you're going to pay for. There's the packages we talked about. There's the carnival charges, right? $51.95. And here's another way you can save money if you want to buy that package. If you buy it when you book, $51.95. If you wait till you get on the ship, $5 more. So if you procrastinate, it's a thief of your pocketbook, because they want you to buy that before you get on. They're going to basically penalize you if you wait to make that call. You're going to pay for it. They have all the services on board. Remember, this is a mini city, right? You guys, if you've cruised, you saw this. Spa, hairdresser, dry cleaning. They love to take your picture when you get on board, and they love to sell you pictures all week of you doing something. And they'll have one room that's just got all the photos, all the people they've snapped pictures of, and you literally have to go along the wall and see if you can find yourself. And they're going to... Oh, yeah. I suppose they can now. Oh, yeah? There you go. See? Yeah. Because they will take your picture when you get on board, Jan, and put it on your card. Because whenever you leave the ship, they're going to scan you out. And when you come back in, they're going to look at your picture so you're not an interloper and scan you back in. And that's how they know how many people are on board and if everybody's back on board after a port stop. So you have to carry this card with you at all times. If you forget everything else, take that. Because really, you can't get off the ship without showing it to them. If you forget it, you're going to have to go. They won't let you off without scanning you out. And they have security on board just like a big city would. Do that. The shore excursion, we just talked about that. Prices are going to vary. You can buy from the ship. They'll offer you these shore excursions. Or other companies offer them too, who are not connected with the cruise line. Here's the situation. If you go on a shore excursion and you booked it through, let's say you're on a Carnival cruise, and you booked it through Carnival, if you're late coming back, in other words, your bus has a flat tire or it breaks down or whatever, they will wait for you. If you book the shore excursion with someone else, not them, they don't wait. You're then treading on the good graces of the captain, how tight his time schedule he's on, whatever. But if you're late getting back and you see the ship leaving the port as you get there, it's your responsibility you'd have to either fly or somehow get to the next port to get back on that ship. Because it just sailed away with all your clothes and all your money, probably your wife or your husband if you're out shopping or whatever, So that's the big debate, right? Because people say, well, I can just talk to a guy when I get off the ship. When I disembark, there's people there selling everything. Everything. I mean everything. And they want to take you in their car to some location, right? Somewhere cool. Well, A, you don't know who they are. You're hoping that they don't take you off and do something different with you than you had planned. They're not connected with anybody. So you are on your own. So you know what Kevin does? Kevin doesn't book anything that doesn't book through the cruise line. I pay extra because I want the safety and security of knowing. And sometimes like the luxury ships will send an escort with you. So they'll send one of the servers who's not busy. They'll send one of the servers on the shore excursion with you just to make sure everything's cool, right? And when you stop in the port, you can always have the option of staying on the ship. Some people, once they get on, they never get off. They love port days because everybody else gets off, and they can go to the spa, or they can go to the gym, or they can work out. There's nobody on the ship. There's maybe 3,000 people on the ship, and on port day, 2,500 of them will get off. So they don't have to wait in line for anything. They can have lunch and do whatever they want to do. Internet access, we talked about that, may be free, but usually not very good. And if you're going on a cruise, some people still insist on doing what they do at home on the internet. And really think about it. You know what I mean? If you have, yeah? Yes. Exactly. Yep, and they will. Yeah, we're here, yeah. But you know what they are in those places? If you've got 1,000 people getting off the ship and a sign says free Wi-Fi, the first one, you're going to have to wiggle your way in there, right? Holy cow. But you can't do that. Now, they've got gambling, full-blown gambling, bingo, slots, blackjack, anything you want to do in a casino, they got on that ship. And it's a separate company that has contracted with the cruise line to be on board that ship. So if you're losing money in the casino, you're not losing it to Carnival. You're losing it to some entity that has rented that ship space and set up a casino in it, right? And bingo, I played bingo. I like to play a little bingo. I'm old. I like to play bingo. And I played one time, and I think did a head count. And if you could buy like 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards. They even had a gizmo. It had 6 cards on it, and you didn't even play it. You just set it by you, and the machine played the bingo for you. So if you get a bingo, it beeps. So all you have to do is yell, bingo, and it's confirmed because it's done by the computer. And you know why they do that? Because you can play 6 cards, and physically that's tough to do, and they can charge you more money if you want 6 cards, but the computer can do it easily. So you can drink, talk to your friends. I had a whole table of 6 people one time, and they're just sitting there. They were playing cards. You know, they had a card game busting out, and all of a sudden, you know, beep, beep, and here they all had these little, they're not much bigger than this, beeping, and the guy said, oh, hold it, I have a bingo. Bingo, you know, and so to me it kind of takes some fun out of it, really. Come on. And then especially dining. So I mentioned before, a lot of the cruise ships now, they've discovered that if people don't like the normal fare, and for me, food is, you know, I like food, obviously, and my definition of good food is a lot. So I don't really need to eat special food, but, you know, other people in my party do. So we'll go up and we'll try a steak place, but they'll charge you for that, $25, $35, $50. It's whatever the going rate is on that particular cruise line. And it's best to always book those before you get to the ship, because what you have to watch for are the nights that the ship is at sea, not in a port. It'll be hard to get a reservation because everybody's on the ship. The nights it's easier to is 8,000 miles, and they're worth a penny a point. It's $80. And if you book a balcony, you're going to get 4 miles. So if it's $4,000, that's $16,000. Now you got $160. I mean, in equivalent cash. But if you have their credit card, which sometimes you pay for, but you get other benefits with it too, they're going to give you 4 miles for interior or 7 miles for a balcony or a suite. So now your $4,000 cruise just got you 28,000 miles, and that's enough for a free flight. You're leaving that on the table, because if you call Carnival directly, they're not going to give you a free flight. They're not going to do that. And Carnival doesn't care. They're going to sell that room no matter. They actually prefer it if you deal with an agent, because it's less work they have to do. So nobody loses here. You're just a big winner. Example, there's my example. Book a balcony stateroom, $5,000 for the cruise. That sounds like a lot. Make it whatever number you want. So I'm going to book, I have their Mileage Plus credit card. I'm going to book a balcony. So I'm going to get 7 miles times $5,000. I should have put the dollar in there. That's 35,000 miles. Plus I'm going to get a penny or a mile for every dollar I spend anyway on the card. So that's another 5,000. So now just for using the credit card and buying from United Airlines Cruises, we get 40,000 miles. That's almost 2 round-trip tickets. So 2 round-trip economy saver words are 20,000 miles. And when you fly it early in the morning or late at night, you can get those for 20,000 miles. That's 2 round-trip airline tickets anywhere in the U.S. You're leaving on the table by calling Carnival Cruise Lines directly. But you can also use money in your miles. I put points, but money and points, miles and points, money and miles to pay for your cruise. So if you fly a lot, some people do, some people don't, you can even combine your miles, and they'll give you a discount for every mile you apply towards the price of your cruise. You just pay the difference in cash. And you get points for that too. So it's a win-win-win scenario. And Delta, Delta now, instead of, they offer points based on how many nights you're cruising. So if you have a Delta, my Delta American Express card, if I use that to pay for my cruise, I'm going to get Delta miles for that, based on whatever kind of room I spent. When I did my Carnival cruise, I used my Delta card. So I'm going to get miles, points on Delta. If you use your United card, it's miles you get. So it's just a win-win. This is if you have a Marriott. This is United's deal right here. I got this in the mail with my bill. So I'll just give you one of these. You can see it for yourself. Look in the lower left-hand corner there. Those of you watching online, you're not going to be able to see this, but so this is what they've got out there. Like I said, I just Xeroxed what I got online. So if you look in the lower right, you can see it. The sample cruise price, you see that? Let's just go $2,500. So miles earned on interior card view, remember, or ocean view. Remember this? Well, I'm a member now. This is from the Mileage Plus credit card. So I'm going to get 4 miles for every one of those. So 4 times 2,500, bada boom, bada boom, miles earned 10,000. And if you do the balcony, now I'm going to get 7. So if you take 7 times 2,500, 17,500. So why in the world wouldn't we do this? I mean, it's money on the table you're leaving by booking through. You can book through anybody you want. I repeat this 1,000 times. But this is what's out there. And if you're not a consumer that knows what's going on when you book a cruise, you're going to lose all this. You're going to lose this. You'd lose 17,500. Fred. You would be. And then I'm your guy. So if you call United Cruises, they're going to know about this deal. And then Kevin, if I'm the agent, I'm your agent guy. So if you have a question or concern during the whole booking process or whatever, then you would call me back. You'd call and say, Kevin, I got a question.
So if I don't have experience, I can get you direct.
Absolutely. I'll give you my extension. It's an 800 number with an extension. And I may be on the phone with somebody else. You'd leave a note and you'd say, hey, this is Fred, Kevin. Call me when you get a minute. I got a question about something. And I know sometimes, too, with all these cruise lines, with World Travel, I know, they'll pay usually when you book a cruise, you have to pay a deposit. And then usually 90 days before your cruise, you have to pay the rest of it. Well, they were even paying your deposit. And then like 120 days before you went on your actual cruise, you'd have to pay back the deposit. So usually it's, it can be any $100 a person or $250 a person or whatever, but it's less. You can book the cruise and then even make the deposit later on. You don't even have to pay. I think they have a $24.99 processing fee, they call it. So it's a fee. But that's all you'd have to pay when you booked. So easy to do. And like I said, most of the time, unless you like to see you do face-to-face with people, and these days with all the business done on the internet, you're not buying things from people face-to-face anyway. So why would this be any different? Okay, cruise tips in the home office. We're getting to the end. Okay, this is from my wife. Any questions on anything? It's a lot of information, isn't it? Jeepers, criminy. So if you've never cruised before, that's a lot of information. Do you know more now than when you walked in the door?
When you call someone,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be able to help them find the best value, the best bang for the buck? Rather than just me saying, I want to go on a Carnival cruise, I want to go on a Norwegian cruise.
Well, you're going to tell me your story. What you're going to tell me, we had a questionnaire we went through. Have you cruised before? Who was it on? Who went with you? How many people were involved? Did you like it? What didn't you like about it? And if you tell me things, well, there's too many people, I had to wait in line with 100 other people every time, okay, that's going to probably take you out of the Carnival thing. How much did your cruise cost? Do you remember ballpark what you paid for it? What are you looking, do you have a budget for this cruise? And they will I would then slot you basically in a cruise line if you have teenagers going with you and you don't mind a lot of people, but you want a good value, I might put you on a Royal Caribbean. You know what they have? Super slides that come out around the ship, and they have rock climbing walls, and these Royal Caribbean set up for teens, people with teens, and small children too. But usually if you have small children, you take them on Carnival. It's just the way it works. And they have a lot of programs for the kids. Because parents, like I said before, parents when they're doing a cruise, get as far away from their kid. No, just kidding. But they want the kids to have some activities they can do.
What if you want to have some of those high-adventure activities that you don't want to have to do with kids?
Well, normally people who have kids don't do the high-end, like shore excursions. They just don't do it because it costs too much money. They just don't do it. So by pricing alone, you're going to rule out a lot of all the people. You know what I mean? So if you go on a cruise line that doesn't cost much money, then all the excursions are going to be booked up because they're not going to cost much money either, because that whole cruise line is dedicated to entry-level cruisers who don't have a lot of money usually, right? Or don't want to pay much for a cruise or whatever. But the money is going to be usually less. Not saying they won't charge you for a shore excursion, because I just paid money for a shore excursion and it wasn't cheap. But literally by paying $100 for a shore excursion, if it's something you really want to do, that's going to rule out a lot of people because they ain't going to pay $100. Especially if you have a lot of kids, you just stay on the ship and they can run around in the pool while everybody else is off spending $100. You know what I mean? But they would, if they don't ask you your story, like tell me about your cruise experiences, like we were talking about here. Jan said some, and Fred's been on a cruise. They're not doing their job very well. So, and if you talk to somebody and you don't feel comfortable with them, like in anything you buy, Just say thank you very much and hang up.
Because I mean, what you've already covered is so many moving parts.
Absolutely.
How do you find
Well, you would.
puzzle?
Well, the key thing is, first off, just go down the list of the who, what, when, why, where. Who's?
I think one of the worst things to do would be to come back home and 3 weeks later found out you could do the same thing for $300 less.
Well, and depending on when you go and what ship you go on, you're never. It's like airlines. I would bet you if you walked onto any airline and went down row by row and person by person, you would never find two people who paid the same price for that airline flight. Never. Because it's going to depend on when you booked it, where you want to sit. You know, all these things are moving parts now. It's not like in a movie theater. If you walk into a movie theater, nobody paid the same price to get in there. Because I'm a senior citizen, you're not. You know, we didn't pay the same price. So, but what they like to do on cruise ships is people like to have a beer and say, "What'd you pay for the cruise?" You know, and there's actually a .com called cruisecritic.com. And if you want to log onto that, it's Cruise Critic, so cruisecritic.com. And they have all sorts of information on cruises, good and bad. They wish they wouldn't have put critic in it because critic sounds like it's all bad. But they really give you some nice tips on stuff to look out for. Because if you're going to spend, I don't know, $5,000, $6,000 on a cruise, you better be doing some research on that baby. Because you don't want to make the mistake you're talking about and spend too much. But I guess the gist of it is, really, cruises, they all cost the same because it would be too difficult for the cruise line to have all these different price points. And if somebody's selling a cruise for less, they're probably using some of this, the money we talked about, to lower the price somehow. You know, they're going to say, well, the cruise is this, but you do get $300 on, so we've taken that out. You know what I mean? They're going to be fussing around with the amenities. They're going to be trying to pull the wool over your eyes somehow. Because cruises really, unless you go in a group, like you guys did a group land tour, they might get a little different fare. But remember, they're booking 20 people, and the cruise line goes, well, if you're booking, even hotels do that. I want to book 20 people in your hotel. Well, we're going to give you a $20 offer. You know, they'll give you a little discount. Brett.
One of the things that we noticed on our cruise line was an older boat did not have as much stuff for the kids to do, and there weren't that many kids.
Right. And you know why? Because
there wasn't much.
Yeah.
The carnival had some beautiful brand new.
Well, they want to go on the new ship.
Right.
They want to go on the new ships because the parents know.
But I didn't care,
Right.
and Jenna didn't care. She sat by with the pool and
Yeah. Well, I just read on the way coming in, was going into town this morning. My wife and I went. I was on the internet when she drove because I can never drive that well, I guess. But they have a cruise ship now they're coming out with that's going to have a roller coaster on the top of it. Yeah, did you? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, every night there's a show. So if you, usually they have early seating and late seating. So if you eat at 6, while you're in eating, half of the ship basically is at a show. It's like a cabaret show with seating, like a big auditorium. And then when that show is over, they come out, and then they go to eat because you're done eating, and then you go to the show. So they just flip-flop. That's the way the cruise ships do it. And all of them have free shows. You don't have to pay anything for that. But they have a lot of them have movie theaters. When we were on Cunard coming home from England, they had a planetarium. So you crank your seat back, and they have a planetarium. I fell asleep, I'd have to say. But I mean, when it gets dark, I usually go to sleep. But it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's an experience you'll never forget. There are. If you're going to go with something where everything is included, you're going to pay more money for it because they're going to get their money. They're going to get it from you up front. And my wife and I now, we're dead spoiled. I mean, we're doing this at Carnival Cruising. Nothing wrong with Carnival, right? This is what your preferences are for my sister because she's never been. But we wouldn't probably book a Carnival cruise because now we've been exposed to different ways of cruising. So we're smarter now. And I sold cruises. So we know more. It's like you guys have expertise in different areas I have no clue about. So you could get up here and I could change seats with you and you could tell me all about what you do, what you're making the big dinner for. I have no clue. So what you always have to go, if you have a legal problem, you go to a lawyer. If you have a plumbing problem, you go to a plumber. If you're going to go on a cruise, you go to a cruise agent. They're supposed to know what they're doing. And if they ever give you the impression that they don't, walk. Because they're going to take your money and they're going to get a commission to do it. So I don't give my money to anybody if I don't think they know what they're doing. I don't mind paying them because they got to get paid, right? So if you go buy a car, I told the guy one time, I don't mind, you getting a commission on selling me a car. I just don't want to make your whole monthly commission on my purchase. Exactly. So getting back to tips from the home office, my wife, this is the last slide, I think. We have one more trivia question. Exercise classes, she loves them. That's why she never puts on a pound. They have excellent workout facilities. They have a pool on board, jacuzzi, everything a club would have, plus attendants and towels, the whole thing. As I told you, we have breakfast delivered to the room because we want to start our day off with a nice meal. I find if I eat a little bit for breakfast, I'm less hungry for lunch. You know what I mean? If I don't have breakfast, now I'm going to hit the buffet line, and I'm going to get bigger than I am. My wife she takes the walks. She does deck walks around the deck. They have that. They have clubs you can join while you're on your cruise. They meet up there every morning, so you make pals, you get to know people. And she always uses the stairs. She's never used an elevator, I think, in the last 10 years on a cruise ship. Because imagine the exercise up and down 8 decks, 7 decks. And every time you go somewhere, and that's another thing with a stateroom, if you don't want to, you have to look where the elevators are. Because if you don't want to walk a mile to get to an elevator, usually there's 3, front, back, and middle. You want your room to be near a deck, but you don't want it to be right next to the elevator, or you're going to hear the thing going up and down all night banging around. You don't want that. Take advantage of all these intellectual enrichments. Jan, you talked about that. They have classes on board. They have lectures on board. I find them most interesting. If you looked in the information I gave you, it's all spelled out in there. You can go in here and see whoever you want. You just go in there and sit down and listen to them. It's a nice way to spend your day. And we always like to try something new that we haven't done before. Participate in stuff. Because you can sit in your room and say, there's nothing to do on board. Well, guess what? There is. You just ain't doing them. So if you want to sit there and be whiny about it, then you're just going to be that way. Bring some money with you. So they use cash machines on shore if you want to. We talked about that. Bring some change with for tips. Meet a lot of new people. My wife loves, probably not as much as I do, but anyway, she likes to talk to people, especially people from England, And explore the port. So do shore excursions. Get out and walk around. Just go see. Jan, I imagine when you guys did your cruises, you got out and walked around, right? That's the fun part to us, but you got to just be careful where you go. It's with any big city. You don't want to be wandering around on side streets somewhere. Just stay on the main drags where everybody else is, and you'll be good. And then she says relax, manage your time difference. That's what we're talking about. If you're going to go to England, it's going to be 5 hours later. So you have to learn how to manage that, and then enjoy your time on board. It's really a lot of fun. I'm a cruiser now. I never did a cruise. My parents hardly could afford to get us up to northern Minnesota to a lake, much less go on a cruise. This was not part of my growing up experience. For most kids, it wasn't. But now our generation and our kids, this is stuff they want, new experiences. They see all this stuff on the internet. They want to go see Ireland. They want to go see Europe. They want to go see South America. My wife and I went to Antarctica last year. We flew to Buenos Aires, took a ship down to Antarctica, saw seals and whales. Fabulous. And on the way back, we made a couple stops on the way back, too. Fabulous. You're never going to see it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. How many people in their whole life get to go to Antarctica? 0.00 something. Just never happens. And one other tidbit. Let me see if we can get through. I think the trivia is next. Let's see here. By golly, it is. Let's go back one more time. I want to talk to you about one other thing. I know I'm running out of time. I have 15 minutes over, Fred. One of the best values going. This one, again, is for Oceania. I pardon that, but I get all the stuff from them. But this will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. One of the best values in cruising is called a repositioning cruise. So this is a cruise where in the wintertime, they're bringing the ships back from Europe, and they're bringing them back down to the Gulf. Because in the winter, that's where they cruise, because it's too cold. So if you've ever been in the trucking business, and they call it deadhead driving back, so the trucker takes stuff somewhere, and he drops it off, and they're always trying to pick up loads on the way back, right? Because they got to drive back to wherever they came from anyway. That's exactly what a repositioning cruise is. So if you look here, this one is Miami to Rome, right? 15 days, March 31st next year. This is on the Riviera, right? This is, again, only reason I'm using these guys because I get all their stuff. So this is what I had to use. All cruise lines do this. Carnival, Holland America, Princess, they all have repositioning cruises. So this is something to look for. and they do it in early season, so it's March or April. This one's in March. And then in the winter, so they're bringing the ships, back over to the Europe in the beginning of the year. And then now in October, November, they're bringing them back. So this one goes from Miami to Rome. And then in the fall, they'll bring it back from Rome to Miami. So those are both repositioning. They're just taking the ship and moving it like a chess piece around the globe. So if you look at the rates here, this is a 15-day cruise. You can see the dot. It starts in Miami and goes all the way over to Rome. It makes only, 3 stops? And if you look at the daily itinerary, that's what they're telling you. It leaves Miami. You can get on the ship at 1. It's leaving at 6. Then you're cruising the ocean on April 1st and 2nd. Then you're going to stop in Bermuda. You get into the port at 8, and they'll leave at 5. Enough time for a round of golf if you want. Then on April 4th through the 8th, that long red line, now you're going over the Atlantic. And then April 9th, you get into Portugal. You're there from 8 to 5. Then you're cruising again on the 10th. On the 11th, you're in Malaga, Spain for the day. Then on the 12th, you're cruising the Mediterranean Sea now. You're out of the Atlantic. And you're going to stop in Barcelona all day. Then you're going to cruise that night. Remember, the ships cruise at night while you're sleeping. So normally when you wake up, they're parked in the next port. You don't even know they're moving, Mr. Water Person. Yeah. Miss Water Person. But then you're in Monte Carlo. How about that? You wake up and you're in Monte Carlo, for crying out. You've only heard about that. You saw the race from there a couple times. But they're there from 9 to 5, and the next day you're in Rome. And the Civitavecchia is the port in Rome. It's about an hour from Rome, actually. Rome is sort of not on the coast of Italy, so it's about an hour drive. They would get you into Rome to the airport if you're going to fly home from there. But a lot of people would say, listen, I want to stay in Rome. I've never been in Rome. I want to look around there. I want to stay for 5 days, and that can be arranged. But the point is, if you look down all the expensive cruises here, go way down the bottom, an inside stateroom, $22.99, right? You see that way to the right? That's a cruise-only fare. That means you got to pay your own airfare. So if you go one notch over, the O-Life choice, remember, that's $32.99. That's $1,000 more. But you know what airfare would be? More than that. Because really what you have to do is get to Miami, and then you have to what they call deadhead back, an open jaw flight, because you're leaving from one airport and flying back from another. That's what that's called, an open jaw. That's terribly expensive if you're booking that yourself. And so you can get in there to Rome and say, I want to stay here for a week, and then you just arrange your flight to come back in a week.
So that's not a horrible deal for 15 days.
Absolutely cheap. That is an awesome fare. Hey, absolutely. This is an entry-level luxury line. That's what I'm saying. And you can get these with Holland America or Princess for less than that. Nope. Agents. We don't call cruise lines. No, agents could handle all this for you. But believe me, cruise lines really don't want you calling them. They want you to call the agent because otherwise they wouldn't have them. They don't have enough people to take all the calls. They don't.
I was in sales.
Yeah.
The agents also know how to speak the cruise line's language and the consumer's language.
They're your intermediary. They're your.
The consumer doesn't know what they're talking about, so they call the cruise line and the cruise line says, what the hell are you talking about?
That's exactly what I've been trying to tell you for an hour and a half. Do not do that. Because they'll gladly talk to you, but they're not going to tell you about any discounts, or they're not going to. An agent is supposed to help you with all that. I mean, when I had clients, I was in sales as well. I'm helping them out because I want them to come back to me the next time they want to buy something. I want you to be my long-term customer. Like I said, when I was selling cruises, I had guys that they never bought a cruise from anybody but me because I tried to give them excellent service. If they called me and left a message, I'd call them back directly. If they told me what they were interested in and asked me a question, I would find out the answer. When I called them, I had it. So if they explained their question to me properly, I could give them an answer straight away. So anything you find, you can look through the brochures there if you want to. You can take any of them you want to. They're all here. That a cruise line can sell you, an agent can sell you too. There is no difference really between talking to one or the other. The only thing you're going to give up, right, if you book through an agent, is if you call Carnival Cruise Lines and you have something wrong with your booking or something, they're not going to help you with that because they will say, go back to your agent because they booked it, right? And the key thing with cruises, I'm telling you this and I'll tell it to you 100 times, make sure you spell your name right. Because if your name is misspelled by one letter or off by one letter, if your name is Joe and you spelled it J-E-O or Joseph or whatever, they don't have to let you board because it has to match exactly with your passport. So they're going to ask you that. If you book with an agency or with a cruise line, it doesn't matter. They're going to ask you to confirm your name about 3 times because you know what they're doing? They're taping it. They're taping it. So if you get to the port and you say, no, I gave them. I told them my name was J-O-S. They can call that agent. They know who booked you by the code on your booking and pull the tape. We had to do it because sometimes, the customer's not going to want to take the hit on this if they misspell their name. Or your birth date has to be right because they want to know. This is all, if a cruise leaves from the U.S., they're sharing this information with TSA. Try and get on an airline if your name's not spelled right. That ain't happening. It just isn't happening. It won't happen with the cruise either. Well, hard to mess that up. So that's my last. They do. I bet they do. That's all I had. Let me go to the last quiz, and then we're done. Here you go. You can pick 3 answers, leave 1 out to win your prize. So how many miles long is the longest train tunnel in Switzerland? 19 miles, 27, 35, 47 miles. Leave 1 out. Leave out the 47. I believe this card is headed your way.
35 miles.
Yep. It's used for high-speed trains under the Alps. Yeah. So even though not many of you here, we may have some people still online, do we, Fred? Or did we? We'll see. Anyway, have fun. Thanks for coming. We have more of these we're doing, right? We're trying to do 1 a month. And every one will be on a different subject. So the next one is July 10th, and we have Thrivent, one of the people we work with here, at the church. And they're going to talk about long-term health care. So who's not concerned about that? And the agent's going to be here. We said you can talk about it. He'll have brochures on the back table. So if you wanted to make an appointment with him to talk about it, see what the rates might be or how that might affect you, then you can set up an appointment with him. Like that's why he's coming here. But he can't do a hard sell. Like I'm not selling cruises. I couldn't book one if I wanted to. You have to. I'm just giving you information on what to look for.
If we wanted to make these slides available online,
Yeah, well, I don't know, is it? You tell me. Well, let's do it. Yeah, there's no problem with it. And if an agent is watching this, I mean, these are just general rules, and, different agents do things differently, or whatever. This is my best knowledge. So if you have questions about it, I pass the ball to you. And if you have a question about it, I'm around, obviously, in the building, so you can certainly ask me a question or whatever you want to do. When you get to the point where you want to book something, I'd be happy to help you out. But I'm telling you, the best deal going is booking with these airline cards. And if you don't have one, get one. Because it's going to save you money. You're going to get miles. You're going to get free flights. I don't know why you wouldn't do it. And the deals are the same. The price does not change. Remember, we talked about that. No matter what deals the agency is giving you, they're giving you those so you book with them. That Carnival Cruise Lines is not giving you miles. They're not giving you, this is all coming from the agency. And if you do it with Marriott, you can use Marriott. If you stay at Marriott's, if you're a member of their card, you can use points that you've earned with them to help offset the price of your cruises as well. That's all I have.